All right, happy Monday, everyone. So today we're going to move forward with the writing process for our final essay for Unit 1. I just want to review with you everything you've done so far as the pre-writing and preparing for this. Colby is letting me borrow his copy of the story, the scholarship jacket. So you read the text and you thought about it, you analyzed it, you annotated. He did a great job. I can tell he was thoughtful as he was reading this story. So you're going to use this as a reference if you need to find more evidence or if you need to review the details of the story as you're writing your essay. The other piece of pre-writing that we did was this essay planning guide, and so I borrowed Ashlyn's as an example. And what we did was we read the prompt very carefully, and we mapped out the three requirements the prompt is asking us. Remember, you have to do this very carefully every time you get a prompt, because if you're not writing the answer that's answering the question, if you're writing about something else, that's going to be called off topic, and you might not get a score at all, even if it's a really well written essay, and I would not want that to happen to you. So that's why we go through very carefully and we think, and she's even underlined it, what it is you have to do. Explain what lesson Martha learns because of her grandfather. And that's what we wrote here. Then you have to compare this to a lesson you have learned from someone in your life. That's what we wrote here. And then finally, and this is pretty much in every prompt you're going to see, use evidence to support your response. And that's what we wrote for number 3. So that's what we're going to use to organize our ideas today and eventually take that into an essay later this week. We also wrote the claim. The claim is the big argument what this whole essay is really about. And I had an example. Important people in our lives teach us valuable lessons. And you can use that example if you want to, or if you want to come up with your own like Ashlyn did, you can write your own. But if you don't have one of your own, it's my gift to you. You can have that claim. And that's how our whole essay is going to start off, okay? Then we went in and we reviewed, we found 2 pieces of evidence I pulled straight from the story. She happened to choose the first 2, but all of these are fine pieces of evidence that you can use. And then we brainstormed who has influenced you in your life. And she listed several people, and then she chose one person and explained the lesson that she learned from this person. That's fantastic. She can use that when she goes to fill her organizer today. And then finally, we looked at an exemplar essay. Exemplar means very good. It was very well written. And this one, I'm going to have to get with Ashlyn. This one happens to have 2 paragraphs. Hold on one second. The honors exemplar should have 4 paragraphs. So I will get with Ashlyn and give her the 4-paragraph exemplar. But you should have an introduction, 1 body paragraph about the story, the 2nd body paragraph about your own lesson, and then there should be a concluding paragraph as well. So make sure you use that and refer to it as you are, thank you Jules for letting me borrow yours, as you are writing your essay. It's a good reference to look at. So if you're stuck, if you're not sure how to begin a paragraph or to include evidence, you can always look there as an example, okay? So what I need you to do is go ahead and take your organizer, this is what we're going to work with today, and put your name at the top. And we're going to go ahead, make sure that I'm going to let you pause the video to make sure you have everything you need, your organizer, your story, and your planning guide, and your pencil. And we're going to go ahead with the main claim. So going back to that main claim, you can use the one I gave you or write your own. That's going to be the first sentence of your essay. So I want you to place that in this first box for your introduction. And I'm just going to write the one that I suggested. It's important people. In our lives. Teach us valuable lessons. I want you to notice that I'm not talking about Martha. I'm not talking about me. It's just a general statement about the topic. It's about people help in our lives that teach us valuable lessons. We don't get into any of the details until the body paragraph. So this is just a broad general statement about the topic, which is learning valuable lessons from people, okay? Don't mention Marta in the introduction, or don't mention Marta in the claim, but I do want you to mention Marta in the second sentence. So in the second sentence of your introduction, I want you to introduce the story and the lesson Martha learns from her grandfather. So an example of that would be in the story, and I'm going to put quotes, the scholarship jacket. Make sure you capitalize the T, the S, and the J. And then you put end quotes and a comma. Okay, this is called an introductory prepositional phrase, and we have to put a comma after it. Okay, in the story, the scholarship jacket, pause. Then we're going to say Martha learns an important lesson. I don't want to say valuable again. You don't want to repeat your adjectives because it becomes what's called redundant. You think of another word that means the same thing. So I'm going to say an important lesson from her grandfather. That's going to be the second sentence of the introduction. Okay? So we've introduced a little bit of what the first paragraph is going to be about. Now in the third sentence, we're going to introduce a little bit about what the second body paragraph is going to be about. That's going to be about the personal story that you're going to talk about someone in your own life and the lesson that you learned. So you could say something like, I learned. Now we need to think of another word besides valuable and important. I could say I learned a life lesson, because life lessons are important, about, now this is where you have to fill the blanks in. Maybe it's about dignity. Maybe it's about hard work. Maybe it's about trust. Maybe it's about friendship. Maybe it's about family. Whatever your lesson is that you are going to write about, kind of put the topic of that lesson here. I learned about this. And if you can have a lesson about dignity, that would be great because that's in the prompt, but it doesn't have to be about dignity, just any lesson that you've learned. A lesson about blank from blank. So that's going to be who taught you the lesson. What's the name of the person? You could say my mom, my dad, or the name of the person who taught you this lesson. So go ahead and make sure you have everything filled in for your introductory paragraph, and then we'll move on to the second paragraph in the body. So the second paragraph is going to be a CER paragraph. We know that's claim, evidence, reasoning. That's argument writing. It starts with a claim, evidence, reasoning, evidence, reasoning. Okay, we do that, we repeat that. So your paragraph claim is going to be specifically about the scholarship jacket. So now I want you to begin this with a statement, something like, this is an example, you don't have to copy this exactly, but if you want to, you can. I'm going to say Martha, comma, I'm going to put from the scholarship jacket, quote, the scholarship jacket, comma, end quote, learns a lesson about dignity. Now we're getting into specifics. Okay? Remember, dignity, that's one of our vocabulary words. That's to have that self-respect, that confidence, that pride in yourself. And grandfather does teach her that when he talks about how you've earned this jacket. We don't pay for things that we've earned. So he gives her that confidence and that feeling of self-worth by having that conversation with her. That's the lesson for her. So this is where you go in to your evidence that you highlighted or underlined in your planning guide, and you use that to support the claim. So I'm looking back here at Jules, and I can see that she liked the third and the fifth piece of evidence. They're all good, but I'm going to use the third one just as an example because I want to remind you what a speech tag is and how to include this. So I'm just going to use that piece of evidence as an example. You can use yours instead. So I'm going to start with a speech tag. It looks like when I read this piece of evidence, grandfather is saying this. So I want to say grandfather. Okay, we're going to use the present tense, says, not said. Anytime you're talking about characters from stories, you want to use the present tense. That's just a rule. You don't say the past tense, because stories can always be reread, so characters are always doing things in the present tense. That's how I remember it. So grandfather says, comma, quote, and now we're going to copy that evidence word for word. It says, then if you pay for it, Marta, I'm sorry I keep saying Marta. Marta is the author's name. This is an autobiographical story. If I'm not mistaken, I think Marta is the Spanish version of Martha. So I kind of keep going back and forth, but in the story it's Martha. Then if you pay for it, Martha, it's not a scholarship jacket, is it? I have no idea what that noise is outside. I believe it's some teachers. They're, I guess it's Friday afternoon and they're a little excited. It's not students that you hear, it's teachers. Then it's not a scholarship jacket, comma, is it? And I'm just going to end it there just for the time because I'm trying to keep this short. And then we put end quote. Okay? And then what you do is you explain what's going on here and how it supports her lesson. And I would go on to say something like, he's showing her that you don't pay for achievements that you earn. It's not really an achievement if you're paying for it. And he's telling her, and I'm making inferences here, but he's telling her, you just need to be proud of yourself either way. You know you earned it, but we're not going to spend money to get something that we earned. And she agrees with him. Later in the story, she realizes, yeah, he's right. And that gives her that confidence when she goes back to talk to the principal later. So this is where I'm just kind of thinking out loud. I would write some of this down. Remember, this is brainstorming. It's not necessarily everything that you're going to put in your essay, but it's going to help you remember when you go to write your essay why you chose that evidence. So go ahead and put your reasoning down for whatever evidence you chose. And then I want you to repeat that one more time. Go to your second piece of evidence. Don't forget your speech tag and your quotation marks. And then another sentence or two explaining why it supports the claim. I would even ask you to write 2 sentences of reasoning for each piece of evidence. Right now, 1 is okay, but eventually I want you to have 2 for each piece because frankly, that's what honor students should be doing, at least 2 pieces of reasoning, because this is your original thinking. This is what I'm most interested in. I remember the story. I know the quote. I helped you with the claim, but what I really want to know is your thinking about the evidence. Go ahead and fill out your organizer for the first body paragraph and come back for the second. All right, the second body paragraph, remember this is about your personal story. Your paragraph claim can be something like, it could be very similar to the sentence that you put in the introduction. You could say, I'm going to say, my dad, I'm just going to use myself as an example, or whoever the person is for you, taught me a lesson about hard work. My dad was a very hard worker. one of the hardest working people I've ever known in my life. And just watching him, I learned how valuable hard work is in life. So that's my claim. So you want to include the person and the lesson, because that's what you're going to talk about in your paragraph. So what I would do is evidence. I would talk about how he taught me this lesson. What was going on. I would explain what was happening. You don't write this down. I'm just showing you what to include in this section. What was happening? What were the events? Just kind of tell the story. There's always a story behind a lesson that you learn. And then for the reasoning part of this, I want you to explain what lesson you learned. Explain the lesson you learned. And you can pause this video anytime so you can take this one sentence at a time. I'm just going to go through it at once, and then you can go back and work on it. The second piece of evidence, I want you to continue the story, okay, about this lesson. Continue what was happening. And then for the end of it, it would be good for you to discuss how this lesson changed you. Because that's really what it's all about. When we learn important lessons, we do change and become more mature, more wise people, you know? So that's kind of how you can, I'm mapping out how you can include the second paragraph. Take some time, think through how you're going to put this together, and when you feel confident and you've got enough ideas, you can come back for the conclusion. All right, we're almost done. You're doing a great job. The hard work is right here, what you're doing. When you go to type your essay using this organizer, it's going to be so easy because you've done all the hard work in this organizer. So finally, the fourth paragraph is our conclusion. And you should typically begin your conclusion by restating your main claim, okay? So we're going to go back to that introduction and look at that first sentence. Important people in our lives teach us valuable lessons. And you can just copy it, you can, but it would be better if you could rephrase it. Keep the same idea, but kind of rearrange the words and rephrase it so it's not an identical copy, okay? That's going to be your first sentence. Your second sentence is just tell me what you mainly talked about in the first body paragraph about Martha and her lesson with the grandfather. The third sentence is going to be a little summary statement about your personal story, the lesson that you learned. You're just reminding the reader what you wrote about. That's what the conclusion is. You're reminding the reader what you wrote about in the body introduction in the body of your essay. And then finally, the last sentence is a closing sentence, and this is where I want you to leave the reader thinking about your topic, which is about important lessons, important people. And you can leave it with a question. You can leave it with an interesting statement. If you have a quote that you know, a famous quote, I like to do something like a call to action. I don't know if you know this. Call to action is where you are trying to convince the reader of your essay to do something now that they've read your essay. Maybe you could ask them to be an important person in somebody else's life and teach them important lessons because you've been the receiver of a lesson. And it's suggesting that the reader go do something now with this idea. That's a really good way to end an essay. If you can't think of a call to action, a question. Okay, leaving the reader with a question is something when you ask a question, the person reading it automatically thinks about it. And that's the goal here, is you want them to think about your essay after they finished reading it. So think about that, brainstorm it, write some ideas down, and when you're done, I would like you to bring this to me so that I can take a look at your ideas, and you will get a big purple check when you're done, and we will move on to the next assignment that's at Google Classroom.